Hello, everyone. I almost forgot to play the intro music. Let's see if it's audible here. All right, I think that should be decent, but yeah, okay. So this is Steven Schinder of Yesshift. Um, co-host. I'm the son. My dad, Dan Schinder, is a father, and yeah. So Um, today, celebrating founding Yes keyboardist Tony Kaye's birthday. My dad couldn't make it to this particular broadcast or the next couple. We were trying to plan out whether we could do another one of those January Yes musician birthday episodes together. Normally, we put Tony Kaye, Trevor Rabin, and John Davison into one big January celebration, but there's just some scheduling stuff and there's just a lot of stuff going on, some great stuff. But ultimately, we decide, okay, so Steven, will go on and I can do another one of these solo episodes, but my dad sent in something for me to read off on his behalf. And yeah, we're going to be talking about people's favorite Tony Kaye moment from each of the first three Yes albums. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm just making sure I sound great. Okay, so why the first three? Some of you might be asking as I share this broadcast around. So like I mentioned off the top, we have three Yes musician January birthdays. Tony Kaye's is today, January 11th. Trevor Rabin's is on the 13th, and John Davison is on the 16th. And when planning out these little birthday celebration broadcasts, I noticed, you could kind of divide these into like focusing on three albums for each of these guys. For Trevor Rabin, you could have 90125, Big Generator, and Talk. Union being omitted for obvious reasons. I mean, the stuff he put on Union is great, but it felt kind of weird to be like, what's your favorite Trevor Rabin moment off of Union, So when we get to his celebration, it'll be those three Yes West albums. And since it's kind of debatable or hard to tell, I was having a discussion about this with someone. Kind of hard to tell sometimes what Tony Kaye is playing on those Yes West albums, whereas on the first three albums, it's very clearly him, and you can hear him better. He's spotlighted a bit more, so it seemed like it was fair to for Tony mainly focus on the first three, but if people want to say, "Oh, I love his contribution to this later Yes thing," like that's totally cool. People, I not only asked what are your favorite Tony Kaye moments from each of the first three albums, I also added and just share your general thoughts on Tony and works of his that you really like. And some people threw in some really cool stuff. And for John Davison, it'll be Heaven and Earth, The Quest, and Mirror to the Sky, because those are the three Yes studio albums we have with him so far. So yeah, that's the deal. And let me just. So I think the way I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna read off Dad's submission real quick, because he says something at the end of his submission that I think will be a nice thing to keep in mind as I read through all the fan submissions, and then I'll read my own at the end, and we'll see what people's favorite Tony Kaye moments on those first three albums are. So, yeah, and if you're tuning in, chime in. Feel free to comment and tell me where you're watching from. And if you're watching the archive, this broadcast live on Facebook, and then we put it onto YouTube and on podcasting platforms, But in any case, just, celebrate Tony Kaye, his works, his contributions to Yes or beyond and before Yes, he might say. So, just opening my dad's text real quick. So, he provided his top three, and I tried to make the wording for the question, favorite Tony Kaye moment from each of the first three Yes albums. I tried to make it clear, but there were some people who thought I meant one moment from just that period. So I had to go back and say, okay, but what about these other two albums? Which is totally cool. I know it can get confusing. Everyone's like off doing something, so things happen. But there's a lot of great stuff that people wrote, regardless. So what my dad put for his submission, he said, uh, looking around, for the debut album, which turns 55 this summer, if you can believe it. Like, wow. No opportunity necessary, no experience needed. The cover of a Richie Havens song from Time and a Word. And for his favorite Tony Kaye moment from the Yes album, he put All Good People. And then he said, just kidding on the last one. People who've seen this show for a long time will know that it's kind of a running thing where dad says, I've seen All Good People. It's not a bad song, but it's been played so much I don't need to hear it anymore. So when he put All Good People, I just knew that he was joking, and I like even mentioned that in our little back and forth. Um, and I did say, like, I had a feeling you were joking on that last one, but the organ sounds great on it, though. Like on toward the end of your move, especially as he said, true, that is a great point, and you should mention that, which I just did. Uh, and he says it is the one sound that got lost over time in a way that really had encapsulated the spirit of the song. So for his actual favorite Tony Kaye moment from the Yes album, he put it would be Yours Is No Disgrace. I think that this particular album will get the most polarizing answers. People will either pick that, Perpetual Change, or Starship Trooper, but I truly, absolutely love Yours Is No Disgrace. It has endured the most. Yeah, that's really interesting right there. And, keep that in mind as we go through all these answers from fans, with their choices from the Yes album and from the other two albums for that matter. So, right here I have on my trusty Google Doc. Yeah, no, sorry if you're watching this, you might notice I'm looking at my phone still. It's because I'm sharing this around to the different Facebook groups, so people can tune in if they want to participate live. Um, okay, so we got that done, and I'll keep doing that. So on this Google Doc that I have these answers that people submitted. So Nathan Tyler Lowry, starting off, he says by far Circa Valley of the Windmills and his solo album End of Innocence. So he begins by listing his favorite Tony Kaye works in general. He says, but I haven't heard his whole discography. And there are some parts on the Yes album when I'm like, how did he know that anticipating the chord changes by a beat and a half or more would work? And his offbeat synth horn stabs on Big Generator are not sneer worthy either. Minimalistically creative is he. Um, and he says, I think I told him that I still need to. This is kind of embarrassing to admit, but I still need to do a deep dive of the Circa discography. I don't know why I haven't already. I've heard a couple of their songs from the first album, and I really liked them. I really love the Yes medley that they did, but for some reason, I just haven't made the time to go through the Circa discography yet, and that's something I really need to rectify. Maybe that'll be one of my New Year's resolutions. Making a resolution 11 days in, but whatever. But yeah, I really do want to check out more of that stuff because we got great musicians in that band. All right, so uh, after I mentioned that I need to go through that discography, Nathan said, "Yes, pardon the pun, but Billy really allowed him to him being Tony." to lean out further on each one until on the later he was composing and performing some of their greatest work ever. Even Henry Potts holds the last album in highest regards. So that's Henry Potts from Bondi Gazoo that he's talking about. You know, the very updated on some latest Yes member news. A very good resource, that site. So yeah, and I remember hearing that they might be working on another Circa album. I'll have to look into that a bit more, but yeah, maybe that'll be an incentive for me to. I mean, it's kind of silly to say. There's already incentive for me to go through the discography because they're great musicians and great music. Um, so yeah, that's Nathan's response right there. And I have a touchscreen laptop, so in case you see me like poking around. Um, so then we get Stephen Hollingsworth. Oh, another Stephen. He says Tony was great, had the best Hammond organ sound of all the players, and yes, nice. And I don't see that he put a top three, so I think he might have just left it at that. So apologies if he did put an answer later and I may have missed it. I tried my best to comb back through, but maybe comment after the fact if you'd like, and people can see it in the post, like whether videos on Facebook, YouTube, and whatnot. So next we have Scott Medina. So Scott says, looking around, Astral Traveler, Adventure. Well, Adventure is a really, I would say, obscure, perhaps most underrated song on the Yes album. I think part of that is that the other songs on that album have been performed live a lot more than Adventure has, to the point where Adventure, to me, kind of feels like it's part of the earlier era, whereas the rest of the songs feel like they're after. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, those are my own thoughts on that. But yeah, these are great selections from Scott, who also continued. It said, and then Hearts, Shoot High, Aim Low, The Calling, but it's hard to pick out Tony versus Trevor on keys on those albums. So yeah, we had a little back and forth about that, and it's yeah, it's true for the Yes West stuff. It's kind of hard to tell. Like there are certain moments where it's very, uh, I feel very 100% that's Tony. Um, like there's that particular sound like the on the calling and on Hearts. I'm pretty sure it's Tony doing the do 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 do. Like I feel like that's probably him. So then we get Sanders Thornburg, who says his playing on Adventure is lovely. I love all three of those albums. I guess I'd pick Survival on the first album and Then or Astral Traveler on Time and a Word. Yeah, I suppose it can be really tough to choose between some of these songs. You know, I think sometimes fans take for granted like how adventurous Time and a Word was. You know, some people stick to like the Yes album onward, but there's some very adventurous stuff on there. Oh, I see we got comments live from Robert Nasir, who says, thanks for this very worthy tribute. Lots of surprises in Tony's career, including multiple live outings with David Bowie and the disclosure that he and also Thomas Dolby did session work on Def Leppard's multi-platinum Pyromania album. People like Mutt Lange and David Bowie don't bring you on unless you are a top player and have a lot to offer. Yeah, that's a good point there. And you know, David Bowie, the other day would have been his birthday. I think yesterday was the anniversary of his passing. But yeah, such a huge career, you know, very popular musician. And yeah, he brings on the people he think will work best with him. And he's worked with Tony Kaye and Rick Wakeman. So that's a very interesting little bit of trivia there. So moving on with the list that I have here, Pat McGuckin says the amazing organ in No Opportunity. And then for the Yes album, Perpetual Change. And from the debut album, Every Little Thing, you know, their cover of the Beatles song. Yeah, those are great selections, Pat. I mean, these are all great selections. Yeah, every little thing. I kind of wonder how people who are mainly fans of the Beatles would feel about the Yes cover. Because to me, I'm someone who, Yes is my top favorite band, but I've also, later on in life, I went and got through the Beatles discography, and I would consider myself a fan of them. I really enjoy the Beatles music. But to me, I feel like Yes's cover, it really brought something out in that song. It's like a more rocking version, and so I feel like it appeals more to my sensibilities. But I do wonder, like, what would someone who's a Beatles fan first think of the Yes cover version? Um, like, would there be any Beatles fans who would even prefer the Yes cover? Like, I'm very curious about that. But yeah, again, thanks for the submissions. Then we have Bruce Irwin, who says, Tony was amazing playing with David Bowie. I saw two shows. Nice. Yeah, very cool that you were able to attend a couple of those shows. I don't think we hear from many people who've seen Tony Kaye with David Bowie live. So yeah, very cool. Then we get Peter Mitchell, who says from Time and a Word, then, and my all-time favorite song is Survival from the debut album. The whole band is playing so unbelievably good, and Tony with his Hammond sounds so iconic. And from the Yes album is the special song Adventure. Here is the piano playing of Tony. It's outstanding. Jeff Downes made a great version in his piano solo on the Three Albums tour in 2014. A fine version of this song. Yeah, like I mentioned, Adventure was very seldom played. I remember reading somewhere that they were considering bringing it out again for the San Luis Obispo shows that ended up on Keys to Ascension. They were considering that along with South Side of the Sky, but ended up not doing it. I think they might have also been considering it in 2008, but yeah, they finally brought it out when they did the Three Albums tour in 2013, 2014. I think that was. And it sounded really good. They did justice. Um, and oh, I see Alexander Nowak replied to Peter saying, I love Survival too. I recall there was also like a back and forth between a couple people. One of them saying, uh, actually, maybe that's later in this doc that I have. So I'll bring it up if it's on here, but if it doesn't pop up, I'll try and mention it after I go through all these. All right, so next. Robert chimed in again, saying, having to compete with players like Rick Wakeman and Trevor Rabin, it's all too easy to forget that Tony was part of some of Yes's very best works. I'm on team Yours is No Disgrace, but also Tony's work on the first two albums had him rocking out hard, playing on equal role in the band, even more so than on the Yes album. Yeah, thanks for chiming in there, Robert. So here comes another Robert on this list I have. Robert Parducci, who lists Dear Father, Astral Traveler, and Perpetual Change, all great tracks. Now, Dear Father, that's an interesting one because it did not appear on the debut album, but a early version, maybe even two early versions of it, appear on the bonus tracks of the debut album when it was re-released in 2003. You could definitely hear Peter Banks a bit better on there, and I guess Tony as well. Um, there was a version with an orchestra recorded during Time and a Word, and I think it was put on a single as a B-side and later as a bonus track on that album. So, yeah, I kind of think maybe Robert here is saying the version from the debut album period. So, yeah, fair play, I guess. I'm not going to dock any points for that. We're celebrating Tony. Then we have David Wendell, who says, his last performance with the Yes in 1971. So, last performance of the first run that he did with Yes. Playing America is awesome. Better than the recorded version and best live version ever, in my opinion. And then he mentions One Live Badger in 1973 and Circa's Valley of the Wind in 2015 shows how talented Tony was. From Yes, Harold Land, Looking Around, and Survival are great. From Time and a Word, The Prophet. From the Yes album, everything except Clap, lol. Tony is underrated and underappreciated among Yes fans. So, yeah, that right there. Um, Clap, obviously, it's a Steve Howe solo piece. So it's a good piece, but it doesn't feature Tony at all. So, fair enough. Um, but yeah, real great stuff here. One Life Badger, Dad and I talked about that. Was that the end of last year or the end of the year before? Might have been the year before. But you do get a bit of that, a bit more of a bluesy rock sound on parts of that at least. And America, Yes's cover of the Simon and Garfunkel song. The version from that final show on that tour in 71 is much longer than the studio version that people are very used to. And it feels more improvisational and jammy, and it's really cool. It's on the Word is Live box set. It's really cool. People should check that out if they haven't already. Um, yeah. So, yeah, thanks again, David. And then we get Chris Clousley, who says, I just love looking around quintessential 60s vibe. Yeah, yeah, it's funny. The debut album is the only Yes album to come out in the 60s. Time and the Word was partially recorded in the 60s, but I don't know that we really know which songs may have been in the 60s and which songs in the 70s. But yeah, Looking Around does have a really cool 60s sound. It's great. Then we get Stephen Zevechin, who says, Looking Around, no opportunity, a venture. Nice. Yeah, I feel like no opportunity necessary. The orchestra is very prominent on the album, but if you watch the Beat Club broadcast where Yes are playing that song, like you can hear Tony a bit. But well, I guess it's a different intro. Like on that one, he does a, whereas on the album, I think he does a, and then the orchestra does a. Yeah, there's a really cool clip on YouTube where you can see Tony playing it on Cruise to the Edge back in 2019. It's really cool. Let's see. Just give me a. Oh, Chavez Carlos chiming in saying, Good morning, my friend. Happy birthday for Tony. Great tribute. Great. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Let me see if there are any other comments here. Just give me a sec. Just around, looking around me. Do 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 do. Okay, so and let me make sure my sound is still good, real quick. I've seen all good. Yeah. Okay. Let me just refresh it and make sure it's still sounding good. But things seem to be going smoothly. Clearly, like you can all hear me, and it's all good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Oscar Jimenez says everything he did solo and with Yes/Union, truly nice guy. Yeah, I know it can be tough to choose favorites, so a little blanket statement like that, Tony's got a great career, so why not? Then we got Peter Kenny, so another Peter, who says all the focus was on Steve, but Tony was fantastic on the Yes album. Astral Traveler, a particular favorite too from Time and a Word, Plus, I always wanted Adventure to be much longer. His piano on that is immaculate. Okay, yeah, so this is the comment I was thinking about. Well, first off, yeah, that's a good point. The Yes album, people, look back and tend to focus on the Steve Howe of it all. And, why not? Because that was the first album Steve was on with Yes. So he has great contributions. But Tony also has like some really strong playing on there, in my opinion. So, yeah, he really shines on that. This comment about wishing Adventure was longer. I remember seeing earlier that there's a back and forth between Peter and I think Sanders from earlier, um, where they were talking about the extended outro that appears on, I think it was the Steven Wilson remixes. And, I've given that a listen and it really is interesting. And I think on the live tour from 10, 11 years ago, they may have done the extended intro, which in a way kind of reminds me of South Side of the Sky a bit. And that also like faded out on the original, but had that extended outro in the live setting. So very cool. And then Gordon Oliver says, "How about Tony on America? He's killing it." So yeah, mentioning that version that's on the Word is Live again. It feels like that's having a bit of a renaissance here today. It's really cool. And then Parker Drew says, "Looking around for sure. Side one of One Live Badger is monstrous, and his live work with Bowie in '76. Nice. Yeah, Tony like really did some cool stuff in the '70s after he was no longer in Yes, and of course before reuniting with them. Then we have Mike McCrum who says looking around, and Chaz Sniding says all of them absolute monster. So I guess he's uh, saying like all of the songs from the first three albums are like top Tony moments. Then we have Hogne Bo Peterson. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Who says the solo he does during the jamming at the end of Starship Trooper on the 9012 live video. It was the first time I had seen or heard anyone play like that, and I found it and still find it awesome. Other highlights, Looking Around and The Prophet. Yeah, I think 9012 live, like you mentioned with Starship Trooper, Tony sounds so great on that, and also the escalation of like the Hammond on I've Seen All Good People, toward the end of Your Move. I kind of think back to that moment as well. So yeah, very very great to mention that right there. Sorry, just doing some more sharing around me. So Adam Voigt says, "Looking Around, The Prophet, that opening solo, and basically all of the Yes album, can't choose. Actually, my favorite Tony moments are the Hammond solos on Hearts and The Calling." Okay, yeah, fair enough. Then Barry Bartle says, "Looking Around, Sweet Dreams, Starship Trooper, from the first three Yes albums. But the Circa album, Valley of the Windmill, is absolutely knockout." There's that album again. I really got to check that out. It's getting so much praise here. Yeah, I really got to get on that, get my stuff together. Roger Manito answered with Adventure, No Opportunity, and Survival. Nice. Then we have Jason Gomez who says, "First time I ever really heard Tony Kaye playing hard was One Life Badger, by Badger, of course." So, yeah, that's a good point. Like I said, you get more of that blues rock element there. Then we get Steve Yett who says 100% on fire on this album. Um, oh, I don't think I got which album. Let me see. Yeah, I don't think I saw. Maybe he posted a link and it was like one of the albums, but I don't remember which one. So yeah, Steve, please comment if you're watching. And yeah, but it's so hard to pin down because, in my opinion, Tony Kaye really is on fire on multiple albums. Or actually, maybe he responded to Jason's comment about One Life Badger, so that's a possibility. Felix Reut says first three albums he played with Yes. Okay, so I guess maybe it's like really hard to choose on Felix's behalf as well. Then we get Terry Stevens, who says Yours is No Disgrace is my favorite. No favorite from Yes, the debut album, but definitely Time in a Word from that album. So the title track, Time in a Word. Okay, so fair enough. If it's hard to choose from a first album, that's totally fine. Um, like I said, these are like great selections and whatnot. And like so far, we've really seen that there's not just one clear cut answer for each of these albums from everyone. You really do get some variety, which is amazing. Um, yeah, so next we have Allison Norwood, who says, Honest to God, one time my friend and I, oh, this is a really funny anecdote. One time my friend and I were sitting in the hotel bar with him after a show a very long time ago, and he literally fed us some goldfish crackers, telling us to take our communion. Loved that moment, although very silly, that is a cherished Yes memory. That is so funny right there. Tony really does have a sense of humor. I think you could see it in some of the documentary stuff that has been put out by Yes. And also when I saw, like I said, I saw the 50th anniversary tour show in Anaheim where he guested on a couple songs with them. And afterward, when they were signing autographs, like Tony seemed to be really having a great time. Um, and you know, I was like, "Can I take a picture?" And he was like, "Oh, here!" And he seemed like very enthusiastic and very happy to be there. Is really awesome. Um, so yeah, he seems like an all-around nice guy. So Chris M says, "I just love the way he played the Hammond. He got that gritty, dirty sound that became a staple of the early Yes songs. I think my all-time favorite K work would be from the Yes album. I think it was his best moment in Yes. The album has become a timeless classic." And then Michael Cardozo says, "Looking Around and Beyond and Before from the first album. Then Astral Traveler and Time in a Word from Time in a Word. And Yours is a Disgrace, Starship Trooper, and Perpetual Change from the Yes album." So I guess in this case, Michael put a top three, or no, I guess for the first album it's a top two, and the others it's a top three. So I guess generally Michael's favorites from each of those albums. So yeah, nice. Thanks, Michael. Then we had Brad Fangya, who says Survival, Astral Traveler, Venture. And then Jim Henson, uh, no, not that Jim Henson, says Beyond and Before, Survival, and Adventure. So I guess Jim provided a top three in general from that early period because Beyond and Before and Survival are both from that first album. I think Survival is, for me, the first early Yes studio track I ever listened to in full. Because on the Yes Years documentary, they had the Beat Club performance of No Opportunity, and then Astral Traveler and No Opportunity for from Time and a Word. The snippets are from the music videos, but the audio I'm pretty sure is from those studio versions. But Survival on highlights the very best of Yes was my first time listening to a Banks era studio track in full from start to finish, and I was really impressed with it. Then we have Marcel Poole, who says Harold Land, The Prophet, and Starship Trooper. And then these next couple only posted one song, so maybe the wording in my question wasn't clear, but in any case, these are great songs, obviously. Jay Moore said Starship Trooper, and Bill Lynch said Perpetual Change. Yeah, really great stuff all around. Um, yeah, and I'm very curious, like, what were the most mentioned songs from each of these? I think I'm gonna have to do Control F and just go through all the song titles off the top of my head and figure that out. So, Beyond and Before, I don't think anyone mentioned I See You or Yesterday and Today. Let's see, looking around. Okay, so apparently it appears 10 times on this doc, so maybe that's the top one, but let's just double check for good measure. Um, and I know I still need to read my answers, but I don't think they'll affect the, what the most mentioned was too much. So Harold Land, Every Little Thing. Nobody mentioned Sweetness. Great song, but again, we're favorite song from each of these albums could be very different from favorite Tony Kaye moment song from each of these albums. Okay, so for the debut album, it looks like Looking Around is the top one with 10 mentions on this doc, and Survival being a close second with 7. So now let's try Time and a Word. So No Opportunity got 3 mentions on here. Then, yeah, I think also 3 or thereabouts. Nobody mentioned Every Days. Nobody mentioned Sweet Dreams. The Prophet, also 3 or 4 times, I think, because it was spelled differently on one of these. Let's see, what comes after The Prophet? Oh, Astral Traveler got 6. So that might be the one with the most. Nobody mentioned Clear Days. Time and a Word looks like it got 5. Okay, so I think it's Astral Traveler for Time and a Word. And then for the Yes album, let's see. Yours is No Disgrace. Oh, only got 2 mentioned. Well, if you don't count, like, my dad's response. Let's see. Yours is No Disgrace. And obviously not Clap. Starship Trooper got 5 mentions on this doc. All Good People. Let's see. Okay, I don't think I've seen All Good People got any mentions on here. I'm a little surprised by that, to be honest. Venture, oh, got 8 mentions on here. Perpetual Change got 4. Okay, I kind of want to double check Adventure because I'm kind of surprised. Okay, so that was a mention. That was a mention. Okay. Yeah, wow. Okay. That's kind of surprising in a really cool way. All right. So, yeah, I think generally from this, this little sample size that we have, the top Tony Kaye moments from each respective album, the first 3 albums, are Looking Around from the debut album, Astral Traveler from Time and a Word, and Adventure from the Yes album. And if I got the count wrong on any of these, people feel free to correct me in the comments and tell me that I'm wrong. But okay, so that means it's time for me to give my answers, which, like I said, I wouldn't like really affect the scores of what the top ones numbers wise are here. So, thinking back to the debut album, Looking Around does have prominent K on there, but I also can't help but think of Harold Land. It begins with like really fun, like Hammond stuff, like do 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 do, and the song gets into a darker mood, and then by the end gets more into that more upbeat feel of the beginning part of it. So I think I'm gonna give it to Harold Land for the first album. And for Time and a Word, I'm leaning toward The Prophet. Like, you have that really cool bit in the beginning where it's like do 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 do. The Prophet is a really probably very obscure Time and a Word song, because the most of the rest either have been, well, a couple of them have been performed live, well, three of them at least, beyond the Time and a Word period, and uh, a few of them have also had music videos which people can view easily. But The Prophet is like, along with Clear Days, I suppose, really obscure when you look at that album. So yeah, I'm gonna go with The Prophet for Time and a Word. So funny how Harold Land and The Prophet are track 5 on each of those albums. So then we have, for the Yes album, I'm also gonna go with Yours Is No Disgrace. There's some great Tony moments, and I also think the outro on that particular song is a really cool thing that kind of hasn't been replicated the same live. But yeah, like I said, the Yes album, Tony's playing on that, I think, is kind of underrated compared to some of the stuff. Or I don't know, is it more underrated than the first two? Or maybe I just imagine that, like, people, when they talk about Kaye's playing in early Yes, they mainly think of the first two albums, and the Yes album they kind of focus on everyone. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I just have this idea in my head that's just um, not accurate to what everyone thinks or how they perceive it all. But yeah, like those first three albums, they kind of feel like one era to me, even though some divide the Yes eras into, okay, there's the first two albums, the Banks era, and then there's the How era from the Yes album onward. But I really do look at those first three albums as one era. I think that's also kind of helped by Roger Dean not being involved with those early ones. So visually, there's like a different identity. Each of those three albums having a very different image from each other in England, at least. I guess in the U.S. it was more uniform. Even when the Time and the Word one uh, didn't accurately reflect the lineup, but yeah, so great stuff. Yeah, this was like a really fun thing to do, and like I said, we'll ask that same question for Trevor Rabin and later John Davison. So I'll make a post, but feel free to, email yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com if that's easier for you. And you can send in your favorite Trevor Rabin moment from 90125, from Big Generator, and from Talk. But you can also mention like your favorite Trevor Rabin works in general, because, again, this is another musician with such a huge career. And you can also leave that comment. I guess you could leave it in the live here. I'll try to check back on this afterward. But yeah, I'll also make a post and share it around. And people also can comment in the YouTube comments. And I'll try to do my best to check around. I'm thinking of maybe doing that live on Facebook on noon, Saturday the 13th in noon Pacific time. But if I change the time, I'll include it in the comments and whatnot. Um, but yeah, so while we're at it, again, happy birthday to Tony Kaye. Such a huge part of Yes's history. People, he deserves like all the credit. Like his contributions. Like he deserves all the credit for his contributions to Yes's history. He was there at the start. He was there when they returned in the 80s, and he made the time to be with them on the 50th anniversary tour, which is really cool. Okay, so and this next thing is a little bit of a down note, but I figured I'd mention it since, this post came up earlier this week, just a couple days ago. Tony Clarkin from Magnum passed away on the 9th. So, it's different Tony, but also a musician with a huge career. And I found out about this via this post from Oliver Wakeman, who said, I've had the honor of not only playing on records with Tony, but enjoying his company on a number of occasions. He was a guest on a radio show I used to do with my friend Jim Ling, which ended up with a great evening full of laughter. A wonderful musician and composer. R.I.P. Tony. So, yeah, I passed away at 77 years old. So, yeah, if there are any Tony Clarkin fans in the audience, you know, listen to some of the stuff he contributed to music. There are a lot of these great artists, and they put out great music, and we just gotta appreciate them when we can. Um, but yeah, speaking of musicians who have passed, so I think this was shortly after Dad and I went on the holiday break, but Jim Ladd passed away almost a month ago. So, like I mentioned, I'm gonna be coming on for the birthday things for Trevor Rabin and John Davison, and then on the 17th at noon Pacific, Dad will be joining me to talk about Jim Ladd. I mainly know of. I remember when he put out Jim Ladd's headsets and Billy Sherwood was on that. I remember some of the media buzz around that, but Dad also has like some stuff to say about Jim Ladd, so that's happening on the 17th, and there might also be something else going on here on the Yesshift later that day. I'll have to double check and see. But yeah, you'll have Dad on the show again. We're trying to balance things out between Yesshift and all the stuff happening with Drum Talk TV and the Drum Talk TV Brilliance side. There's just a lot of moving pieces going on, but we're doing our best to balance everything and schedule what we can. So, because we know that people uh, enjoy this stuff. Um, so yeah, I guess that's it for now. And as far as keyboardists go, I'll also mention that Patrick Moraz is going to be at the NAMM show. He put a Facebook post about that, so people can go ahead and check that out. But yeah, I'm sure there's also like some other maybe news items that came out between when we went on break and me coming back on here. I'm kind of wondering if there are some things I should circle back to at some point. So that's something we'll mull over as we continue on with the show. But yeah, you can find us on facebook.com/yesshift, youtube.com/@yesshift, and on various podcast apps. You can type in Yesshift and you'll probably find us. And like I said, you can email yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com, ideas, feedback, and submissions to questions, whatnot. So yeah, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you all soon. And again, happy birthday to Tony Kaye, the amazing, legendary founding Yes keyboardist. Go and listen to some of Tony's stuff.